Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is the continued lies by the government and officials and police about a man who's just pled guilty to 18 charges, 3 including the murder of 3 young girls and another 8 attempted murders on other young girls. And they keep telling us lies. And what is this? And is it to protect him? Is it to protect society? I have no bloody idea, but it is becoming more ridiculous by the day. Remember when he was arrested and people were calling him an Islamist and a terrorist and all these things, and we were called far right for even questioning it because the narrative was painted this was a Welsh choir boy. Then, months later, even after I put out a video on the 1st of August showing people the evidence that the police had already told us it was terror, right? But we were told it wasn't for months. Then, a matter of weeks ago, it became public knowledge that he had rice and poison that she had made and a terror manual. But we were told these murders have got nothing to do with terrorism. And now we're hearing even more nonsense and more justification that this wee boy is not a bad terrorist. The police and the judiciary and the government seem intent in convincing us that this boy is not a terrorist, despite it coming to light today that he was referred 3 times to an anti-terror scheme. But he's not a terrorist. And it's ridiculous. And the first I seen of this was the BBC, where there's correspondent. Right, so Daniel Sanford, at 1:06 BBC correspondent, Home Affairs correspondent, wrote on BBC's live feed of today's act. You know, they keep adding stories onto a live feed about it. Axel Rudakubana was referred to prevent scheme a number of times. Axel Rudakubana was referred a number of times to the government's counter-extremism prevent scheme because of concerns about its obsession with violence. This was not because of worries about any particular ideology such as Islam or racial or religious hatred. The concern was that he seemed to be actively seeking information about violence. So what we have to believe is this guy was sent to, now let me just quote you from the government's own website that tells you the aim of prevent is to stop people becoming terrorists or supporting terrorism. So he got referred onto this scheme. But we have to believe it was nothing to do with terror. He was just a naughty boy that liked a bit of violence. Now, the objectives of prevent are to tackle the ideological causes of terrorism, to intervene to stop people and support them who are susceptible to radicalisation, and enable people who have already engaged in terrorism to disengage and rehabilitate. It's not there for naughty boys with a wee bit of violence in them. There will be different schemes for them. But this boy was sent 3 times to this scheme. And this scheme itself is very suspect because the prevent scheme, it became apparent after claims from Islamists that it was racist, right? When the true figures came out, if you just let me get them, I've got too much up on my screen here. At one point, I think it was last year, I beg your pardon, between 2020 and 2021, they had dealt with 22% of those cases they had to deal with were Islamic extremists. 25% that prevent, this is this group, we in power to try and stop terrorism in our country. 25% was far right and 22% was Islamic extremists. Now, God knows who the other 50-odd% were, right? They've not defined them as being white extremists, far right, or Islamic extremists. So, don't know what kind of extremists this group have put these people into. But at the same time, the anti-terror figures were telling us the police had live investigations. 80% were Islamist and 10% were extreme right-wing. So this prevent mob are a bit stinky, and I will be doing some digging. It looks as if some people have been onto them for some time. There's a lot of work out there on their findings, right? So we've put this guy who's had ricing in his house, Al-Qaeda manual, into a place that reckon half the people that go there are not Islamist or far right, so I don't know how they categorise them, but only 22% of the people they get to talk to are Islamists, despite the police investigating currently at that same point, 80% of the investigations were Islamists. So you'd imagine that's kind of how you split the country up in terms of all the lunatics. 80% are Islamist lunatics, 10% are far-right lunatics, and the other 10% are a mixture of whoever's, right? But no, the people prevent. This is a scandal in itself, the prevent thing. I'm going to do a bit of digging on this because this looks really smelly. But right now, what we know is Axel was sent to them 3 times, but it wasn't for anything to do with Islam or any type of terrorism. And this is a narrative that we've been getting strung along with since the end of July when this horrific thing happened to these 3 beautiful wee girls, right? They're now dead, and we are still getting fed shite as a nation. And this is why people get upset. This is why people get angry. This is why people react. Because nobody in our government, our judiciary, or our police is actually got the bollocks and the gonads to stand up and tell us what's happening in our country. And people need to work it out for themselves, and they become more angry. We're adults. We can accept the truth. But for some reason, certain people in our establishment, and it's not just, by the way, Labour, this is going on longer than Labour, right? They're just particularly mince at it. But for some reason, the Muslim word, the word, as it will probably be known soon, is turning into a version of the N word. You know, a word that people used to use and they're now not allowed to. Right, I can kind of understand why that was the case with the N word. It's not a nice word. But the Muslim word, we're actually getting that eradicated for vocabulary as well. Because 90 times out of 10 when we want to talk about it, it's about people blowing folk up and killing Waynes. And now, we're still getting told nothing to do with terror. Do you know, I'm looking through the charge sheet today. In fact, I'm looking at people comment the charge sheet. That's not technically true. I have not seen the charge sheet. But it seems to me that the only terror thing he's mentioned of terror in the whole charges was this manual that he had. It looks to me as if the charge he got for the poison wasn't even a terror-linked thing when they told us that a few weeks ago. It seems to just be owning poison. Right? So the truth is going to come out. There's too many people angry about this for the truth of what happened to this boy. Was he radicalised? Not to come out. And it's just ridiculous. So what else have we found out today? Well, we found out today that due to his violence he was expelled from school. Police had already been to his house several times because of issues with him. And he'd been expelled from a week before the attack. His reports saying that he tried to go to the school that expelled him to do what? I am unsure. But his dad stopped him going to the school. Teachers had concerns about his behaviour when he was 13. He was excluded for Range High School in Thornbury around 2019. He told Childline that he was racially bullied and he took a knife to school to protect himself. But after he was excluded, he returned to the school and attacked someone with a hockey stick, with the target intended to be a former bully or someone he had a grievance with. A week before the Southport attack, now bear in mind how he got to the Southport, he jumped in a taxi. He booked a taxi to take him back to the Range High School, but his father stopped him from leaving the house. After being expelled from school, he attended 2 specialist schools, one where Press Association says attendance was less than 1%, and teachers continued to be concerned about his behaviour. And again, there's a wee report here telling us the Crown Prosecution Service said these attacks were meticulously planned rampage. But no terrorism. What is terrorism? What is it if it's not taken to the streets? killing 3 young, beautiful wee girls, try to kill another 8 and 2 adults, and you've got a Al-Qaeda manual in your house. That ain't terror these days. So what is? If you enjoyed the video, it's a horrible word to do, it's a strange word to you enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed listening to the content and sharing the news, then fine, give it a thumbs up, please. If you've not already done so, please hit the subscribe and the notification button to the channel. But please leave your comments below. But most importantly of all, unless you're the type of person that A, walks around our streets killing and trying to kill even more children, or the type of people that want to protect someone that does such, then not you. But
everyone else, have a great day. Cheerio, bye now.